show me the top 5 people you hang with and I'll show you your results essentially, which I think there's a lot to that. Yeah. Go surround yourself with the people that you aspire to be.
You're listening to the Just Start Real Estate Podcast. If you're serious about your real estate investing business and need real answers, you are in the right place. And now, your host, Mike Simmons.
Hey guys, thank you for joining me here on the podcast. I appreciate you being here. As always, welcome back if you are a returning listener. If you're a new listener, doggone it, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I really appreciate you giving me the time and your faith in the time that you're spending, because time is precious. We don't get it back. So thank you for being here, and thank you for putting that trust in me. I hope I don't disappoint you today, and I know that I won't, because I've got a guest on that is so inspiring and so unbelievable. He's a successful entrepreneur. He's run multiple businesses in the areas of insurance and real estate. He's a best-selling author of 3 books, including the 100-Mile Mindset, Discover the Power of Being Your Word. And we talked about that, the 100-Mile Mindset. What does that mean? And man, so inspirational. He was also a U.S. Army lieutenant. He served as a platoon leader during the Operation Iraqi Freedom, and he's also a very sought-after speaker and coach, and I was thrilled to have him on the show today. We talked about leadership. We talked about mindset. We talked about what it means and how do you overcome, and the fact that he does run these crazy 100-mile races, and what does it take, and you know, it's not that dissimilar to what it takes to being successful, right? It's all about where your head is, and this was a great talk, and I'm excited to have him on. So on today's show, I am very proud to present to you Nate Bailey. He also has a podcast, so check that out. We talk about that a little bit too. It's called Championship Leadership. So guys, without any further ado, I want to dive into this because I think this is going to make your day. All right, I'd give you Nate Bailey. All right, Nate, thank you for joining me on Just Start Real Estate. I appreciate your time, man. Thanks for taking the time, and thanks for getting to do this. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Mike.
Good stuff. So just to give people context, if they haven't heard of you, and there's a lot, you're doing a lot, you're involved in a lot, and you've done a lot. So that's why I'm super psyched about this conversation. But let's catch people up to where I am at least, and give them a sense of who you are before, real estate, before the coaching, before the speaking and all that. What did you do as a younger person, and what got you going down this path?
I often say this, right? The path that we're on in life, it doesn't always make sense when we're on that path. And oftentimes it has for me recently, as I start to look back, a lot of things start to make sense of the journey that I've been on. But from a really early age in school, I remember speakers that they're on this like school circuit, right? And you get pulled out of class randomly. It's exciting because you get to go to the auditorium. It's like a free pass to go like not be in class. And I just always remember these speakers that would come through. Like I specifically remember certain ones, and just remembering how cool that was and how awesome that was. And it kind of, I think, filed it away in the back of my head of like how neat that would be to do that. We've always gravitated towards leadership positions, whether it was as a captain of like the football, baseball, basketball teams in high school, to playing college sports, being an officer in the Army, different businesses as an entrepreneur, and doing a little bit of coaching and teaching. I went to school, got a teaching degree. And that's, so kind of leads me to where I am today. Was in the insurance business for over 14 years, got into real estate back in 2010 as an investor, still love to do that even to this day. Actually, we're getting ready to buy another property here in the next month. And ultimately, when I look back, all that's led me and prepared me for what I do today, which is mostly full-time as a coach and speaker, working with business owners and entrepreneurs, just really like myself.
How do you think, and I have my own opinion, but I love hearing other folks who played sports. What do you think the role of sports played in the way that you developed as an adult?
Well, I think it's played a large part in my life, because from a really, really early age, like I was in love with sports and being outside, and whether it was baseball or basketball or football, kind of those were the 3 main sports for me. But I did, whatever. I'd play tennis. I'd do, all kinds of different activities. I was outside a lot as a kid. I was very competitive. I loved watching sports. I grew up really in the 80s and 90s. And so a lot of great sports figures from those times that I looked up to and followed and kind of studied. And I grew up wanting to be, right? I wanted to be a professional athlete. That didn't actually happen, but it's a big part of who I am. I think just, what's required to be a great athlete, the work, the discipline, the dedication, the commitment, wanting to win. There's so many things that I've drawn from athletics that have helped me to be successful in life.
Yeah.
And even when I'm not successful, when in those times when you lost or had low moments in athletics, that transfers over to like, hey, you got to get back up, dust yourself off, and keep moving forward.
I don't think that athletics are required for success, obviously, but I think it helps. I think the discipline, number one, it teaches you discipline as a younger person, to go into practice. And, I played football, baseball, and ran track. I didn't play basketball. I was vertically challenged, so to speak. But going to practice and getting hit and running in the dirt and the rain. And, I grew up I'm probably a little older than you, but I grew up in the 70s and 80s. So I played football in the 80s. And back then, not that it was okay or right, but, water was a luxury. You got water if you didn't screw up. They withheld water from kids. So it was just different. It taught you discipline, but also it taught you to work as a team. It taught you to sacrifice a little bit for the better of the team sometimes. It taught you how to be a good teammate and be happy for other people, because ultimately teammate success is your success. So there's a lot of good lessons, and I don't want to it's not really what we're here to talk about, but it was interesting and intriguing that you were in sports, and then you went into the military. Was that right out of high school that you went in the military?
No, actually it wasn't until after my last year of college football. I was... it had finished that part of my life, and football had meant like athletic sports had been kind of just everything to me right up until then. And then after that, there was a bit of a void. And so I was really trying to figure out what the next challenge was or what was next. And so, that's when I joined the military, was right after that.
Good decision.
And, it was a good decision. I don't regret it. At the same time, great experiences. And that's definitely absolutely shaped me, just as athletics has, as a leader, and the experiences that I had being an officer, being deployed. I draw on those every day. It helps me inside of my coaching practice and working with others and helping them to become better leaders in their life. So definitely don't regret it. I guess the best thing about the military that I really loved was really just the people and the camaraderie. I wasn't necessarily in love with the military life, but there's a ton of great things that I've absolutely taken from it. Yeah.
I'm thinking that probably was something that carried over from football, right? The locker room, the camaraderie, that kind of thing. And you go to the military, and it's probably similar, different, but similar. So when you got out of the military, straight into insurance, and how did that look? How did you get into that?
Well, when I joined the military, I actually joined the Army National Guard. So I was still I was kind of like I guess what they would say, the weekend warrior, right? But it was many weekends throughout the month, especially as an officer. It wasn't just the one weekend. It was more of a commitment, and a few weeks a year. And then, of course, when you get deployed or you get sent to schools, your active duty deployment, 15 months, just like being in the regular Army at that point. So I got into the insurance business while I was in the Army, while I was in the Army National Guard. I was a teacher. I taught for a bit. And then bounced around from a few different sales positions. Definitely found that sales was something that I was good at and that I loved. And then that kind of took me into the insurance business. In 2004 is when I first got into the insurance business.
Got you. When did real estate come into the picture?
2010 was when I bought my first properties. And it's really, after I bought my first investment property, I think I had ended up buying probably 3 more within a matter of months. I knew it was something that I always wanted to do, but there was always this apprehension or maybe this fear of like not knowing how to do it, what if it doesn't work out? What if, just all of that kind of kept me from doing it for a few years. But once I had that first transaction, I started to kind of build a portfolio rather quickly.
That apprehension, I had a similar effect before I got into real estate. I spent a number of years sort of like worrying and just sort of procrastinating and telling myself I was preparing. But that apprehension that you had may have served you well, because starting in 2010, buying, especially if you were, I don't know if you were buying rentals or flipping, but regardless, it was a better time to do it than like 2006.
Yeah, it was a perfect time for me. Yeah. I mean, we were buying and holding. I've flipped only a few handful of properties, but yeah, I mean, it was right after the crash, and there were a ton of foreclosures. So it was a good opportunity for me at that time to get in and get some great deals.
For the record, everyone listening, I think we might be approaching another correction, another downturn. So if you're like, absolutely. I missed that first one in 2008, 9, 10, buckle up, because I think we might be gearing up for something similar. Cool. So you're in the insurance industry. You start doing some. Do you still have those buy and holds, by the way, or have you liquidated?
I do. I mean, I've sold a few of them. A few of them I've I've been able to leverage into other properties through some 1031 exchanges.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I still have a number of them. I have 4 properties, I think 7 units total in Georgia. We got 10 units here, 3 different properties in Rochester. I got a place up in Wisconsin as well. So that's kind of what I have for right now.
So I have here in my notes here that you have since sold your insurance business and you are now a full-time business leader coach. You do speaking. I know you have a podcast. Well, it's called Championship Leadership Podcast.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. Why get out of that business? Why get out of business, that industry at least, to do what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, just as far as the insurance business was great. And I had a nice business and a good brokerage agency built up from scratch. But it did not fire me up. It did not get me excited in the morning. And when I found out that there was this coaching industry and that this was something that you could do, because I didn't always realize that this existed. But when I found out about this world, investing in myself and trying to get better myself personally, I was like, man, this would be amazing to do. Again, just looking back at, being a teacher, being a leader, being an officer, wanting to impact other people's lives. That's just that's what a coach does. And so when I had the opportunity, it didn't happen overnight. It happened over probably, 2 to 3 years of knowing that this would be something I'd love to do, to being able to create it, that I jumped at it. And I, sold my insurance business and within really 2 days and, kind of burnt the ships and no plan B and knew that, all right, let's go make this thing work and make it happen. So, I love what I do as a coach to impact and inspire others, and everything that I do, from the podcast to writing books to speaking, it's all aligned with the same message, right?
Yeah.
Of helping others. And so that does fire me up and that does get me excited. And so, yeah.
What is, and I'm fairly certain the fact that you've written a number of books and you speak, that there's a lot of stuff that you talk about. What is some of the central themes? Like you said, they kind of all have a similar message. Like, what is the message? What is it that you talk about and help people with?
Yeah, a lot of mindset, a lot of championship leadership is just something that I've really kind of created into my own thing. But it's around leadership, being a great leader, leading yourself first, being an example, setting the standard, putting yourself in difficult situations. I'm also an extreme endurance athlete. So 100-mile runs or ultra distances or 48+ hour events.
You do that?
Yeah, I do all that.
100-mile run?
Yeah, that's why my book's called The 100-Mile Mindset.
I could write a to moon and back mindset, but that doesn't mean I went to the moon. That's amazing, man. 100-mile runs. Well, there you go. That says something about your discipline too and your mindset, because my goodness, a marathon seems like an absolutely bonkers alien concept to me.
Yeah, right.
And I run, but man, I don't even want to tell you, but 100 miles, holy smoke. Okay, sorry, I don't want to get too off on a sidetrack, but I just think it's amazing. I think those kind of physical endurance things, these extreme physical trials are just mind blowing. So, okay, 100 mile run.
Yeah, and it is. And that's why, but it's not necessarily because I love it. It's because of those benefits that you do get from it. And I know that if I have something big like that in front of me to work towards, then it keeps me focused and driven. And all of that carries over to the rest of my life. It makes me a better father, but better husband, better business owner and coach. It makes me better all the way around when I'm pursuing, these big physical races or outcomes.
What was it like? And we don't get too deep into it, but what was your childhood like in terms of, were your parents strict or were they not so strict? What kind of discipline was instilled back then? Is it something you learned or something you developed? I guess is sort of where I'm going with that.
My father, is not a part of my life, right? But he left at a very, very early age. So it was kind of my mom, and we lived with my grandparents for a short time, but they were pretty, my grandfather was pretty instrumental in my life. And my mom got remarried to who is really my father, my stepdad, when I was around 5 or 6. So he's been there for a long time. And yes, my parents were fairly disciplined, and so was my mom's parents were, and so were my stepdads. They just kind of grew up in that era of you don't question a lot of things. You do it, you work hard, you're respectful. There was a good amount of discipline. We had dinner together as a family, I don't know. We were definitely not the cleavers, but at the same time, there was plenty of discipline, and be home by a certain time and make sure schoolwork done and working. And you got chores to do and things like that definitely impacted me and who I am, and probably absolutely carries over to doing things like a 100-mile run.
My dad, same thing, not in my life so much. Stepdad came around 5 or 6, kind of consider him my dad. Very similar there. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, when he said we weren't the Cleavers, if you're too young, it's a Leave It to Beaver reference from a show from probably the 60s or 50s or something. So, yeah. I used to watch that. So it's fun.
I watched the reruns all
a good poll, man.
the time as a kid. That's right.
Me too. Yeah. Me too. I used to watch it after school. Cool. I'm just curious. I'm always interested to hear folks like you, especially ultra disciplined like that. If it was something like you grew up with tons of discipline and that's just the way you lived, or as you got older, if it was in response to maybe parents that were completely hands off. Like I've seen that too, where somebody they realize when they get older, like that wasn't right and they need the discipline. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you talk to folks about. Winning mindset is something I know that you discuss. How does someone develop that? How do you create that? What do you do for someone who says, I don't know if I have a winning mindset? Like, I don't even know what that means. Like, how does someone create a winning mindset?
Well, you create it. I believe you create it by doing what I do, right? You have to put yourself in difficult situations to create a mentally tough mindset, right? If you are just comfortable and you kind of have settled in life, which many people do. And I'm not saying that that's even wrong. It's just not right for me. It's not right for the people that I coach, because that's not what they want. They want something different. They want something greater. And when you want something greater, it requires you to have a tough mindset, because oftentimes our natural way of being, I think our natural instincts in today's society, with everything in the palm of our hand, right? Like we got Amazon, one click and you can have it in a day. News, social media, likes, comments, shares, like everything's positive reinforcement right now. And that makes us a little bit soft. And so to have that tough mindset, that 100-mile mindset, that's developed through putting yourself in situations where you're a little bit uncomfortable, right? And that is a different place for everyone, depending on where you're at, right? I didn't start out running 100 miles. I started out running 1 mile, and that was difficult. And then it was 2. And then I grew from there and continually pushed up against, my threshold, or what I thought was my threshold, and continue to push through that and fail along the way. So I've learned when I'm feeling a little bit of that resistance, or a little bit like, kind of scared and nervous going into a big race, I know that I'm in the right place, because that means that I'm living, I'm competing, I'm experiencing life, I'm meeting incredible people, I'm getting to see awesome places, and I'm learning how to be mentally strong and tough, because a year like 2020 comes and that we don't see, and it served me well not too long ago. I don't know that I would have responded how I have this year with all the uncertainty that's come. So yeah, I think you got to put yourself in tough, uncomfortable situations. Doesn't mean you have to get crazy and do something drastic, but continually just push a little bit.
The folks that come to you for coaching or for advice or to be in your world, what is it that they're usually struggling with? Like, I always find it interesting, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm really curious, but are the concerns that they have the ones they should be concerned about? Or, do people come to you thinking, I don't have, I didn't have the right upbringing, or I don't have the right ability, or I don't have the right opportunity? How much of it is like course correcting the symptoms that they think is really the problem?
I think you can help someone create a new perspective, essentially, just by asking a lot of powerful questions and just questioning their current reality, or what the stories that they have that they've been telling themselves. Yeah. And, a lot of what I do is through different live events, like the Championship Leadership 24-hour experience that I have, which is physical. And so essentially what I'm doing is I'm breaking their idea of what is reality to them and showing them that actually they can do way more, right? And so that's something that is a definite strength of mine, is to have people in those environments and be able to show them through some different physical evolutions that, hey, you can do way more. Like, I know you've lived this way thinking that this is all that you are capable of, but in a short time period, we can show them a completely new perspective that, a lot more is possible, that they're capable of way more.
So is this event that you put on, is it purely like, is it an all physical thing, or is there some component presentation? Or is it like a combination, or what is it? I'm curious now that you say this. I wasn't aware of this event. So is it like you just get them out there and just physically destroy them and then go, you do way more than you thought, or what's involved?
So it's, the intent is not to crush their souls. It's not to make them quit. There are events out there like that. The intent of this event is really to get them to grow as leaders. And at the same time, yes, it's physically hard, right? But there's no classroom. It is outside the entire time. There's some traveling in between different locations, but there's plenty of time spent just like, all right, let's get together and let's talk. Let's what are you learning? What did you just experience there? What did you learn from that? How can you apply it to your life? So there's a good amount of that in between to break up the physical work that we do.
Do they know what's going to be asked of them before they get there, or is it more of a kind of a surprise?
It's a little bit more of a surprise now. I mean, we do video these things, so they think that they know what's coming, right? And they have a good idea of some of the things that they're going to experience, but we keep them guessing. There are some PT standards that we have them just to give them something to train for, and so that they hopefully show up at a certain level so that they can not just get through 24. Anyone can get gut out 24 hours if they really have to, but the experience is so much better if they come at a certain level, right, of physical capacity. Okay. Then we can push a little harder, and the experience can be a little bit better and a little bit more fun that way too. But we keep it light. You know, we might get on them a little bit to increase the stress or pressure from time to time, because that's what it's like in life. You got stresses and pressures all the time that show up in different ways. And so we can simulate that through that. But for the most part, it's, you know, we're not yelling and screaming, but we are putting them in difficult situations to see how they respond as leaders.
What do you think stops most people from living the life that they really want to live?
You know, it can be a multitude of things. Number one, it's maybe they've had some past failures and they've allowed that to be their identity, and so that they never move past that. It could be that they grew up in such a horrible environment that someone told them that they weren't worth anything and that they were never going to amount to everything, and they buy into that. It could be that they don't have a real strong mindset. And so every time they do come up against a little bit of resistance, which is really just that moment of almost near breakthrough for many, but they back off when they feel it. And so they never learn what it's like to push through. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things and factors in play when it comes to, you know, certain things that hold people back. It could be just a simple, they lack belief. They just need somebody to come along in their life one time to show interest in them and just show belief in them that they don't have them in themselves. And oftentimes, I mean, you hear that all the time. They're like, man, thank God this person came through and kind of took me under the wing and, you know, had belief in me when I didn't. And that's all it takes sometimes.
Yeah, agreed. Talk about who people surround themselves with. Why is that important? What's the impact of your group that you tend to hang with?
Yeah, so important. You know, I mean, you hear it, right? Whoever said this, I don't remember, but maybe it was Jim Rohn, the top 5 people. Show me the top 5 people you hang with, and I'll show you your results, essentially, which I think there's a lot to that. Yeah. Go surround yourself with the people that you aspire to be. That's been a big, huge shift in my life, is when I went to SEAL for Kokoro to surround myself with the Navy SEALs that were running these events. Now some of those Navy SEALs actually are helping me run my event. And if it wasn't for me putting myself in that situation and being around these people, no way would they be in my life, right? Because they're hanging out with other people like themselves that are elite and that are winners and that are the same mentality and the same path. There's no way that Coach Tree Floyd McClellan running for Congress would be the guy that's actually helping me to run this event now that was a 15-year SEAL. So it's putting myself in situations as a coach, investing and surrounding myself with other influencers, or whether it's on the podcast and having someone like Tito Ortiz on, or, you know, all the other incredible guests that I've had. Like, if it wasn't for me pushing myself out of my comfort zone and trying to get a little bit better every single day and putting myself in situations that I normally wouldn't because it is not comfortable, then I wouldn't be in some of the circles that I am. So it's huge. Yeah. When you're around other winners, you either get left behind or you rise up and you become, you know, the same level or more.
I think it's a similar effect. I don't know if you agree, but it's peer pressure, right? We think of peer pressure a lot of times negatively, like kids get sucked into peer pressure to do the wrong things because the group's doing it. Well, peer pressure isn't negative. It just depends on what the environment is. So you put yourself around the right people. Like you said, the peer pressure is to be excellent, to excel, to achieve your goals. So I'm a huge fan of peer pressure, man. It just has to be applied positively. But I think that there's a positive side to that. So talk a little bit about your book. You mentioned it, The 100-Mile Mindset, Discover the Power of Being Your Word. What does that mean?
Yeah. So the book is all about the journey to run 100 miles. And I failed a few times along the way. And then the Discover the Power of Being Your Word is, I had a podcast. Well, it's still out there, but I did 100 episodes and I stopped it. It was just really 100 daily messages, 5 to 7 minutes, called The Integrity Bank. And the Integrity Bank is all, and that's a chapter in the book too, of around just the power of being your word. And for so long in my life, I wouldn't. And a lot of people go through life and they take withdrawals from their integrity bank. Just like if you have your financial bank account, you can only take withdrawals so much until there's a negative balance in the bank. Is like, hey, you ain't getting no more money. Yeah. Well, in our daily life, a lot of people, they break the promises to themselves, especially first and foremost, every single day. And they don't have any money they don't have a balance to take from. And so the power of being your word is just being your word every single day, making little deposits into your integrity bank and getting to the point where, like, from the day you had to make a withdrawal until the next withdrawal you're going to have to make, the goal is to make that gap, wider and wider, because there's times when you're not going to be able to follow through on your word. And so you just got to own it in those moments, and hope that you have the balance there. And again, it starts with you. If you can get to the point in your life where when you tell someone you're going to do something, they just know it's going to happen, right? There's not a lot of people in my life, unfortunately, that when they tell me something, I just know it's going to happen. I could cash that check right now. I can count on it. And if you can become that person, it doesn't matter where you were up until this point. If you start from today, make a decision, and you're just going to become that person, it's a powerful thing, right?
I love that. And I love the idea of when you tell someone something, because you're right. I mean, you think about all the people in your life. If they tell you they're going to do something, kind of have to wait and see.
A lot of times you're like, nah, there's no way you're doing that. You don't say it, but you're like, okay.
But it is powerful to have those kind of people in your life that what if they say it, it's a done deal. Like,
it's amazing. The people you can just count on.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're right. And there's few people unfortunately, there are a few people like that. What was the hardest part? It's a curiosity. What was the hardest part about getting to 100 miles? What was it that you struggled with the most? Other than maybe just the actual running of 100 miles. Was there any other aspect of it that was surprisingly difficult?
There's so many things, right? I mean, obviously there's no substitute for preparation and putting in the miles and putting in the work leading into it. And then there's a lot you learn just by going out to do it, right? You got to put yourself in that place. And that's so the first 2 times I failed, but I learned so much along the way, right? I learned how to do certain things, how nutrition, how to rest and recover, how to pace myself, just all the things that you would learn that you wouldn't know unless you actually go out and do it. But, if I could pick something in the race, I would say really the first 75 miles is really just kind of a buy-in. Like if you're a CrossFit guy, you know what a buy-in is, right? That's kind of a term for, all right, this is what you got to do before the workout starts. And so before going into it, I've kind of figured like, all right, if I get 75 miles, I'm pretty much done. But actually, no, I still got 25 miles to go.
Marathon, basically.
And at that point, you're beat. Every body joint aches, your feet are blistered and bloodied, you're tired, and a lot of times it's probably pitch black and dark out, and that brings a whole set of circumstances to the table. And so it's really just, there's a lot of work to be done before the race really truly begins. And so it's getting to that point and then just really having the mental tenacity or toughness to just keep moving forward, just take it one step at a time and just completely be present. Like the more you can be present, the better you are, because you start getting out into the future of how many more miles you got to go, or how much longer before you're done. That's when you fail. That's when you quit.
Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, like I said, I run, and it's a fraction, but that is the thing. I find, for me at least, when I run, if I start thinking about how long has it been, how much longer do I have to go, how many more miles, that is a killer. I immediately feel exhausted, like I have to stop. So that's a really, really good point. What kind of foods were you eating to train for this? I'm always fascinated by this because I think nutrition's a huge part of it, obviously. So what kind of foods were you putting in your body during this time?
Yeah, absolutely. The ultra world, it's kind of like a free pass to just eat whatever you want. When you come to these aid stations, they're usually just stocked full of like anything from M&Ms to candy to gummy bears to pickles to sandwiches to sometimes pizza to and then a lot of people use the goos or whatever. Yeah. I try to stick to regular food as much as possible. A lot of times I'll bring some things with me, but in an ultra distance race, it's about like just you burning through so many calories to just keep feeding yourself with enough carbs to keep you going so that you don't totally bonk out. Drinking a ton of water. You don't ever want to get behind on your hydration, and salt tabs is a huge one. Like just continuing to replenish the salt and electrolytes so that you don't cramp up. Yeah. You have to be super vigilant about your nutrition just as much as you do about focusing on the run itself. So it's almost like two different things that you're focused on that are extremely important, because it could be, once you kind of get behind, it's almost like it's too late. There's no making that back up.
All right. So we're running a little bit out of time here, but I want to ask you one last question. What does living a legacy mean to you? Let's round it out with that.
Yeah. So my second book was called Living a Legacy. And so me, I've always looked at it not as I think most will, when they talk about legacy, they talk about the legacy you're going to leave. And so I've always tried to look at it as live your legacy, right? Our life is a journey, and it's really more so about the journey than it is the destination. So if you live a legacy, you're going to leave one, right? You're going to leave one behind. If you're living your example of life in all areas, number one, you get to enjoy that legacy and journey along the way. It's not just about dollars to me. It's about, really a well-rounded life, who you are as a person, who you are in business, and your inside of your family, inside of your faith and your connection to God. And so, yeah, it's all encompassing. And to me, it's more about, I try to focus on living it and enjoying it instead of just leaving it for someone else to enjoy down the road. I
love it. That's good stuff. If you want to hear more from Nate, definitely check out his podcast, Championship Leadership Podcast, or you can go to natebailey.org. We'll have all of this in the show notes. If you're driving, running on a treadmill, whatever you're doing right now, listening to this, don't feel like you have to stop. We'll have it in the show notes. You can go check it out. Nate, is there anything else you want to share with everybody? Any other way to get a hold of you, or something else you want to mention before we wrap it up?
No, not really, other than, just check it out. And if you want a free copy of the 100 Mile Mindset, the audiobook version is free on my site. So nice. Go grab it there.
Nice. Yeah. Very cool. That's how a lot of people consume. So that's probably going to be a good way to go. Awesome. Well, listen, Nate, thanks again for your time. And I appreciate it. I appreciate all your leadership knowledge, all your leadership experience, all the messages that you shared with us. Thank you for your service. I don't want to go without saying that. It's very, very important that we have folks like you in the world that are willing to step up and stand up for us. So thank you for that. And just have a great rest of your summer and stay healthy on these 100-mile runs. It sounds incredibly hard. I don't know why I'm worried about you, but anyways, thanks for everything you do, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoy that as much as I enjoy interviewing him. Nate's a good guy. I love the competitiveness, the desire to win, the championship mindset. I think he's a great example of what people can do. Right, 100 miles. Are you kidding me? Like, you can do it. And he said he started off at 1 mile. So I know what that's like. I don't know what 100 miles is like, but it's just about getting the right mindset. And that's why it's important for us to have folks like this on this show to talk to us about what's possible, so we stop having this limited belief of what we're capable of. You're capable of so much more than you think you are, but you have to believe it. You have to get out there and take those steps and have those small wins that lead to bigger wins. So I enjoyed having Nate on. I think that was a great conversation with a guy who's spent his whole life pursuing greatness, and now he's spreading that word to everybody else. If you enjoyed listening to that, go check out his podcast. Give him a little bit of love. Give him a rating and review. That's certainly is important to us podcasters. And I just want to leave you with that one message. You are capable of more than you think you are. So start believing it. Get out there and get started. Make today the best day. I'll talk to you next time. Okay, you're still there. You're still listening. That's awesome. And I really appreciate that. Now, hopefully it wasn't an accident. Hopefully you didn't leave the room and I'm just talking to an empty room right now. But assuming you're still there, I want to do something really, really cool for you. For a limited time, I want to give you a free digital download of my book, the entire book, Level Jumping. If you're a listener to the show, you know it just came out, and it really details how I took my business from being like one where I was just doing a few deals a month, maybe 1 or 2 deals a month, to doing over 10 and sometimes 15 deals a month and over 100 a year. And I went from doing very little profit to over $1 million in profit. And I made that transformation in a 12-month period. And this book talks about what I did, the steps I took to transform my business, and how you can too. So grab a free digital download, and you can get that by texting the words "just start." That's 2 words now. Just start to the number 55444. 55444. So text Just Start to 55444. I will send you a free digital download of my book. It's the complete book. There's nothing held back, and that'll be completely yours just for making it to the end of the show and listening to me. And I really, really appreciate it, guys. So I want to do something nice for you. I do this every once in a while at the end of shows, and if you listen to the very end, every once in a while, I do a giveaway like this. So hopefully you enjoy that. Go grab a free copy. I hope you read it. I hope you love it. Reach out. Let me know what you think. All right, guys. Talk to you next time.